Papa loves mambo, Mama loves mambo. Look at him sway with it, getting so gay with it, shouting Olay with it, wow. Papa loves mambo,
Papa loves mambo,
Mama loves mambo,
Mama loves mambo.
Papa does great with it, swings like a gate with it, he loses weight with it, now he goes to, she goes fro, he goes fast, she goes slow, he goes left, she goes right.
Papa's looking for Mama, but Mama is nowhere in sight.
Papa loves mambo, Mama loves mambo. Having their fling again, younger than spring again, feeling that zing again, wow. Papa loves mambo,
Papa loves mambo,
Mama loves mambo.
Mama loves mambo.
Don't play the rumba and don't play the samba, 'cause Papa loves mambo tonight.
Papa loves mambo, Mama loves mambo. Papa loves mambo, Mama loves mambo.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Imperial Diecast. Now, last week, my brick-and-mortar store, which is called Drogeriemarkt Müller, and about which I have made a video about a year and a half ago, which you can find in my video description, were having a 20% off sale. And since I usually find a lot of 124 scale models there, I decided to give them a visit, and I bought several 124 scale models, which I will be presenting in the next couple of weeks on my channel. And this is the first one that I want to begin with. Now this, as anybody across the world will be able to immediately tell, is a Volkswagen Beetle. And the Beetle is really one of the most iconic cars out there. So if you're collecting diecast cars, and even if you're just specializing in supercars, or maybe, F-segment sedans or whatever, I still think that a Beetle should be in your collection, because anybody who really appreciates cars knows just how much history is tied to this cute little bug. Now, this car was also priced at just €8, and 20% off means I actually got this for just €6.40, which is incredibly inexpensive. So I just had to get it. And I did some research and I found out a lot about the Volkswagen history, so I want to tell you something about that in the next 15 minutes. Let's get started. So this is what the car looks like in its box. You can see that it says Kinsmart down there, diecast metal. So up here we have the Volkswagen officially licensed product sticker. Doors openable, freewheeling. And over here, Kinsmart. At the back, just some legal information. And at the bottom, we have a GM logo for whatever reason. And now let's unbox this car. Now, the interesting thing about this Kinsmart car is that usually diecast cars are secured at the bottom with screws, but this one is held in place by these wires, which means putting it back on its box is going to be a little bit difficult once you've removed it. But we'll see what we can do. To understand the significance of the Volkswagen Beetle, we have to understand by 1930, 46% of American households already had a car. but in Germany it was only 1 in 50. Volkswagen literally means people's car. And so this concept was the brainchild of Adolf Hitler, who wanted to mass-produce an affordable and reliable car for the German people. That is, before he turned his plans to the conquest of Poland, which led to the Second World War. But we're far away from all that, because this is the 1967 model. But it is worth looking back to the long and significant history of this car, because it takes us back all the way to the 1930s. Only a few hundred of these cars were built before World War II, and were known back then as KdF-Wagen, or Kraft durch Freude wagons. And Kraft durch Freude, or Strength Through Happiness, was the government-organized holiday program for millions of Germans, allowing them to keep an eye on what the people were allowed to do while away from work. But thankfully, most of this cute little bug's history and fame is the product of its post-war period, when this car dropped the KdF name and officially became known as the Volkswagen Type 1. But ultimately it was the Volk itself which decided to give it its popular name, the Käfer, or Beetle. And along with the Type 2 Volkswagen bus, it became a symbol of peace associated with the hippie culture of the 1960s, but also a popular car because of the fuel crisis back then. Even today, the Beetle remains very popular in Brazil, with over 3 of the close to 20 million total units sold, and known there as the Fusca. But also in Mexico, where it's known as the Vocho, and where production ran until 2003. So you can say that the Volkswagen Beetle is one of the cars with the longest production runs ever, because it went from 1938 until 2003. Not in the same part of the world, of course, but still. If you check the date of the upload of this video, you'll know what I mean when I say winter is coming. And as such, as I usually like to film my videos in daylight, you can understand that it's not really going to be good because the light is very weak. So I'm going to film this video at night. And I think that the very first video that I filmed, or possibly the very first 1/18 scale video that I filmed, which was about a Ferrari 360, was also filmed at night. So I think I'm going to return to that. And if you like this, please let me know in the comments, or if you prefer me to film at daytime again, just let me know what your preferences are. So without any further ado, let's get started with the review. Now, looking at the front of this car, perhaps the worst thing that you're going to notice first are the huge pegs on each of the headlights. Of course, this is somewhat excusable in that this is a car from the 1960s, and so you kinda can imagine the peg to be the bulb around which the reflector sits, but still, I mean, yeah. But apart from that, the rest of the front actually looks really good. At the very top of the hood, we have a Volkswagen badge, and that's not a sticker, that's actually a real three-dimensional badge. So Kinsmart did a pretty good job there. And from that badge all the way down, you can see this long chrome strip. Again, it's raised, so there's an extra bit of detail there. Instead of just being some kind of matte silver paint, it's a separate chrome piece. And it curves all the way down to this handle here. And above the headlights, we have the indicators. And these are painted orange and are surrounded by chrome. So that's also nice. And I believe that these extra indicators are a feature of the 1967 model, because the Beetles from the 1950s and older Beetles did not have this, I think. And below the headlights, you can see the fog lamps. And we also have this chrome front bumper here. Looking at the front windshield, it's made out of clear plastic. We got the chrome surrounding, as well as chrome windshield wipers. And speaking of chrome, we got chrome side view mirrors as well. And now moving on to the side of the car, you'll notice that the black and the red complement each other pretty well. And that's one of the main reasons why I actually bought this particular model, because I really like the black and the red color scheme. The windows are surrounded by a matte silver trim. This is not chrome, but it still looks pretty good. We have a separator that divides the front window from the vent glass, although both of them are missing here, because this is just a 1/24 scale model. But if we take a look at the door handle here, you can see that it is made out of chrome. So that looks pretty nice. Furthermore, you'll notice that this car has running boards, and the design on the boards is made out of chrome as well. Now let's get a closer look at the rims. So what I like about these rims is that the Volkswagen logo is branded on the hubcaps, and it seems like a three-dimensional imprint to me. However, you can also see that there is some kind of bubbling on the chrome. I don't think it's rust, but I'm not sure exactly what it is. So that's not so good. But I still like the white section of the rim. I think it contrasts with the black of the tires pretty well. You'll have to keep in mind that this car is from an era where there were no brake discs or brake calipers, and so it's probably going to have brake drums and brake pads. However, they're not visible because they're hidden behind these hubcaps. Now looking at the back of the car, this is where things get interesting. This is a rear-wheel drive car, so the fuel tank was in the front. And not only is this a rear-wheel drive car, but the Volkswagen Beetle is also rear-engined, which means it does have something in common with the Porsche 911, and that makes sense because the Volkswagen Beetle was also designed by Ferdinand Porsche, although keep in mind some people say that another guy had the idea first, a Jewish man called Josef Ganz. And yet another claim is that the Beetle's looks were inspired by the Czech Tatra cars of the 1930s. One of the important requirements when designing the Volkswagen Beetle was that it was air-cooled instead of liquid-cooled, so that repairs were made a lot easier. Below the rear windshield, which is also surrounded by chrome, you can see this grille, and this is where air is drawn into the engine. This is the 1967 model, so it has a 1.5-liter air-cooled boxer engine with 53 horsepower at 4,200 RPM. The 1.5-liter or 1500cc Beetles were marked with a VW 1500 badge on the engine lid, but this is a North American model because it simply has a Volkswagen badge on the engine lid instead. The chrome tailpipes are not exhaust tips as such. They're actually called resonators and are part of the muffling system. The exhaust of a Volkswagen Beetle is pretty iconic in the sense that it sounds like crickets chirping. And this chirping noise, according to Volkswagen fans, is something they refer to as the Fweem. That's Fweem for you. But looking back at the details of the model, I also like the fact that we have a Volkswagen rear license plate here. And we got these red taillights, and they glow pretty nicely when exposed to direct light. They don't have any pegs in them, so that's a bonus. The rear bumper is also made out of chrome and sticks out a little bit from the car, just like the front one. And now let's take a look at the interior of this car. So you can see that the interior is bright, which I always like. Apart from that, you can see that in the center we have a shift knob. It's a little hard to see, but it's right there. Not many other details though. I mean, you can see that they did give a little bit of a pattern to the dashboard. Got a few bolts there. And I believe that thing in the middle is the radio. So the front seats do have a little bit of a pattern on them, just like the door inserts. And the back seats do as well. You can see that the door inserts also have the door handle, as well as a little pouch down there. And here's an interesting thing I forgot to show you. Now these seats, they can actually be moved forward and back. See that? This is a extremely inexpensive car, but they still allow you to do that. And not just the passenger one, but the driver as well. Let me see if I can get this door open. See that? Both the seats fold forward so that the rear passengers can board the vehicle a lot easier. Now let's push them back to their original position. This is a car that I got for €8, discounted 20%, so I only paid €6.40. And you got moving seats, which is awesome. So here's a look at the driver's side of the vehicle. And the entire steering wheel was black, but I decided to paint this inner semicircle, or semi-ring, I guess, silver. Because if you look at photos of the real Volkswagen Beetle, you'll see that it's supposed to be silver. So that's pretty good. And if you look behind the steering wheel, you'll notice that we have a single gauge there. I believe this was the tachometer back then, so you could only read your speed and had to make wild guesses regarding how much fuel you had left or what the oil pressure was, and so on. Now on the floor, you'll notice that we have 3 floor pedals, but they're not painted. But then again, this is just a 1/24 scale Kinsmart model for €8 retail, which I got for €6.40. So let's keep that in mind. Now, all those things said and done, just the doors open on this one, so unfortunately the engine cover does not, and the hood does not. Now, many companies make this Beetle. In 1/18 scale, we have Solido making some really good ones, although only the doors open on those ones too. Then we have Burago and Maisto making them. Maisto also making them in 1/24 scale, where the hood also opens and contains a spare tire. And Maisto also makes one in the Herbie livery, so if you're a fan of the Herbie movie, you might want to get that one instead. And Welly makes them in 1/18 and 1/24 scale as well. But I bought this one because of its red and black color combination, which I could find nowhere else. The front wheels cannot turn, but the car rolls pretty well. And here's a look at the car's underside. You can see that it says 1967 Volkswagen Classical Beetle, 1/24 scale, made in China, Kinsmart. Not much else going on down here. Although back here we do have some detail. I mean, you can see the transmission and the limited slip differential. I think this car had a limited slip differential. Anyway. Alright guys, I hope you liked this review of the 1/24 scale 1967 Volkswagen Type 1 Beetle. I think it deserves a place in every diecast car collector's collection out there. And I'm going to see you in the next video. So thank you so much for watching, and this is Imperial Diecast signing out.